friends. I happen to know what the message is going to be about today, and I know you don't, but because I do, I got to pick some really great songs that fit perfectly into the story for today. And the first one happens to be a little song that you love and I love called Believe It. You know, sometimes life just doesn't go the way we expect it to go, but we always have God's promises to stand upon. And it's up to you and I to decide if we're going to believe what God says is true. All right, let's worship.
Whatever the distance or darkness, you're with me, you're with me. Whenever I'm failing or falling, you've got me, you've got me. You won't let me down, never, never. In your love I'm found forever. Your love, it goes on and on, forever is not too long. I believe it, I believe it. I'll never be too far gone, forever I'm in your arms. I believe it, I believe it. I know that your love's never leaving. You're with me, you're with me. I stand on your promise and purpose. You've got me, you've got me. Your love, it goes on and on, forever is not too long. I believe it, I believe it. I'll never be too far gone, forever I'm in your arms. I believe it, I believe it. You won't let me down, never, never. In your love I'm found forever. You won't let me down, never, never. In your love I'm found forever. Your love, it goes on and on, forever is not too long. I believe it, I believe it. I'll never be too far gone, forever I'm in your arms. I believe it, I believe it. You won't let me down, never, never. In your love I'm found forever.
Okay, that was amazing. And that really was kind of a warm-up for the next song, which is called Our God. And this is a song, I mean, we've known it for years, you've known it for years, but we kind of made it fancy by doing this little fun hand motion at the beginning. So, and it happens really fast. So you're gonna go here, 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 and then box, box, and up. All right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, practice that. Pause the video, practice it, and then when you're ready, hit play. Here's Our God.
Massive and cool, are you ready? Put your one in on the ear if you're ready. Redemption crew, are you ready? Let me see your hand if you're ready. Water you turn into wine. Open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you. None like you. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the us, then no good ever stop us. And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then no good ever stop us. And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? So are you ready? Massive and crew, are you ready? Redemption crew, are you ready? Let me see your hand if you're ready. Sing on! And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if Jesus is for us, no one could ever stop us. And if the Lord is with us, then what could stand against? Stand against. Massive and crew, are you ready? Put your one in the ear if you're ready. Redemption crew, are you ready? Let me see your hand if you're ready. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God.
All right, kids, today we are wrapping up the book of Genesis. We started talking about creation and how God created Adam and Eve and how they sinned and how sin messed everything up. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about how God gave this man Abraham a family. Him and his wife Sarah were super old, but they gave him a son, and that son is going to have kids, and those kids are going to have kids, and those kids are going to have kids, and before long, this man Abraham is going to have this giant family tree that's so big, you can't even count how big it is. Now, I told you guys that Abraham is also known as Israel. Now, when you hear about the Israelites or the nation of Israel in the Bible, or even today, there's a place called Israel, you need to know that these are people that are part of Abraham's family tree. Now, at the end of the book of Genesis, we hear a story about Abraham's great-grandson named Joseph. Actually, it might be his father, Jacob, but Jacob is the father of Joseph and his 12 brothers. Now, in this story, which by the way is crazy, so just tune in because you're gonna be like, this story sounds like a crazy movie. But listen, it's a story about a man named Jacob with 12 sons, and one of them, named Joseph, is his favorite. And he basically favors Joseph so much that his brothers get jealous. He gives Joseph this sweet, colorful coat that his brothers are like, I want a cool coat like that, but they don't get one. And Joseph has these dreams that involve his brothers bowing down to him, and he tells his brothers about it, which is not a good idea, by the way. And they get jealous of him there, and they get, like, who does this guy think he is to having dreams about us bowing down to him? So long story short, his brothers basically kidnap him and sell him to some slave trader who takes Joseph away. They end up telling their father, oh, he got killed by a wild animal. We found his coat and there's blood all over it. But really, they sold their brother into slavery, and this person took him to Egypt, where they sold him again to a man named Potiphar. He rose to power in this man's house. Things started going well for Joseph, even though he was in a far-off land with these Egyptian people. Things started to go well in Potiphar's house, but things got bad, and he got thrown into prison for something he didn't even do. So now, Joseph is away from his family tree. He's away from the Israelites. He's in some foreign place called Egypt, where he's locked in prison. And while he's in prison, there's these two important people that are brought into prison. They're actually thrown into prison by the Pharaoh. Now, the Pharaoh is the leader of all of Egypt. He's like the king of Egypt. The Pharaoh throws two of his workers into prison, and these two workers meet Joseph, and they end up having these dreams. And for one of the workers, the dream is a good dream. In fact, Joseph is the one who's able to say, here's what your dreams mean. They say, I have this dream. Can you tell me what it means? And Joseph goes, listen. For you, this dream means that in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to come and get you out of prison and put you right back at your high position working with him. And the other one goes, okay, I also had a dream, and he tells them the dream. But in this case, Joseph says, I'm sorry, man, but this dream is not a good dream. In 3 days, the Pharaoh's going to come get you, but he's not going to restore you to your old position. He's going to kill you. So what happens is that these two dreams happen just the way that Joseph said they would. And Joseph said to the first man, he said, listen, when you get restored to your position, don't forget about me. Don't forget about your friend Joseph who interpreted your dream for you. But he does forget. In fact, he forgets for 2 years until 2 years later, the Pharaoh is having trouble sleeping and he's having these dreams and he can't figure out what the dreams mean. And he asks all his people, can anyone tell me what these dreams mean? And finally someone goes, wait a minute. I met a guy in prison. His name's Joseph, and he told me exactly what my dreams meant, and they totally happened exactly the way he said they would. So the Pharaoh brings Joseph to him, and he says, I had this dream about 7 fat cows, and then right after those 7 fat cows, there were 7 super skinny cows. And Joseph says, I can tell you what that dream means. What that dream means is that all around this region, from Egypt over to where the Israelites lived, all around it, there's going to be 7 years where there's rain and fruit and crops and everything's going to grow. It's going to be good for the animals. It's going to be good for the people. It's going to be 7 years of abundance, which means really good living. But after the 7 years of abundance, like the fat cows, there's going to be 7 horribly harsh years. 7 years of famine. And the Pharaoh goes, oh my gosh, this sounds crazy. And he ends up getting Joseph out of prison. And he says, Joseph, will you help me prepare for these 7 years? Will you help me plan out a way that we as a nation can be prepared for the 7 harsh years? And that's exactly what Joseph does. Joseph helps make a plan to where they save food, they save their wheat, they save their grain. And when the famine hits, everywhere else is just in big trouble. They're decimated by the famine. But in Egypt, people are okay. So what happens is that people from the surrounding regions come to Egypt to say, hey, can we please have some of your food? I know you've saved a bunch of food. And the Egyptians were able to help. And Joseph was the one in charge of passing this food out. And guess who showed up one day? His brothers. His brothers showed up to beg for food. And they didn't even recognize Joseph. It had been so long, he kind of looked a little bit different. They didn't even recognize him, but he recognized them. And the long story short is that he eventually reveals that he is their brother. He is the brother they sold into slavery. Now, as you can imagine, the brothers are like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be killed. He's totally gonna get revenge on us. But Joseph says, no. In fact, what he says in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20 kind of sums it up. He says, you know what you guys did, you meant for evil. You meant to do me evil, but God, he took it and he made it into something good. In fact, the exact words it says here in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position of power so that I could save the lives of many people. That idea of God taking Joseph, who had been through all this crazy stuff, and somehow using all of this crazy bad stuff in his life for something good. Now, that's a pretty awesome thing that God can do. Now, I want to tell you something, 2 things very important. One is that when you look at the story of Genesis as a whole, the Bible up to this point is basically that. It's people doing things that are meant for bad, people disobeying God, people sinning, people making bad choices, and God still finds a way to work his plan towards good. Because as we've told you, the whole plan is going to be ultimately pointing to Jesus. And no matter how many bad choices the people in the Bible are making, God's plan never gets derailed. He still is going to bring about this incredible plan of saving us with Jesus. That is something that all of our bad choices can never derail. Now, the other thing I want to tell you guys is this story is not a promise that no matter what you go through, eventually you'll end up in basically second in charge of all of Egypt. Because some people look at the story and they go, look, Joseph had bad things happen, but God made it all better for Joseph. That's not necessarily how everything ends. Sometimes bad things happen and it doesn't turn out great for us. But the one promise we have is that there's no sinful bad choices that anyone can make that derail God's ultimate plan of redemption and salvation through Jesus. That is something that God will be faithful to bring about no matter what people do. And that's pretty cool to know. So kids, we finished Genesis. Next week we're going to pick up and we're going to find out. Now, by the way, at the end of Genesis, all these Israelites come to Egypt, not just to like get by for a little bit, but they start to thrive. The nation of Israel is surviving in Egypt and thriving in Egypt. And we're going to see what happens next week when we start the book of Exodus.